Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 23 of All About Nothing. I want to start with a little bit of housekeeping today and say that it's my intention to get back to the alternate weeks of blogs starting next week. I hope I can keep up with it, which is going to be a good sort of segue into our topic for today. But before I do, I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who put your comments on the YouTube, so that we know what you like and what your interests are. And one of our YouTube watchers put in that she was really interested in the World Book Club and wondered how to find it. And so I wanted to respond to her since I think it was a female, I don't know, but I don't know the name of the person, but I wanted to say that if you're interested in the World Book Club, which is, I think, a marvelous resource, go to bbc.com, which is the British Broadcasting, and just look for BBC World Book Club, and it'll take you right to that part of the BBC site. And enjoy the international community of readers, which I think is just a marvelous idea and a wonderful way to connect with other people and find out what other people are reading and what other people are thinking. So that's all the housekeeping I have for now. I'm sorry. Our schedule has been irregular, and once again, that's related to our topic for today, which is the somewhat complicated, but to me, very interesting and extremely important topic of regulation. And regulation is one of those words that has two different and distinct and related meanings. And it's worth knowing about both of them. Both of them are very relevant to our larger, topic, which is neglect and trauma. So I want to go into a little bit of detail about each definition. I will start with a little bit of history. One of them is my personal history, which goes back to when I was very, very young, like probably 4 or 5 years old. And I learned the very big word for a 4 or 5-year-old, which is moderation. And my mother used to get so impatient with me about moderation, whatever that meant. I learned what it meant. What it meant was I do everything in extremes, and I need to learn to ratchet down, turn it down a notch. And so I learned the word moderation, although I wouldn't say I learned how to do it. I probably spent my whole life trying to learn that. But then in the early days of the trauma field, and we didn't know that much then, we were just starting. We just got the PTSD diagnosis not that long before. We weren't talking about the brain yet. But one of the things that we did know about was these swings in a person's sort of behavior and psyche between what we referred to as hyper arousal and numbing. And we knew the two extremes because people would get either really, really, really upset, either scared or angry, or they were completely deadened and numb. And we didn't know much more than that then, but we knew that people got very, very what we call triggered, what we mostly still do. And on the other end, what we came to call dissociated or dissociation. And dissociation is another one of those complicated words that has two very different, related and distinct and confusing meanings. But we won't talk about that today. So then, as time went on, we began to understand a lot more about the brain and a lot more about development and a lot more about what we came to understand as regulation. Now, regulation has these two categories of meaning. One of them has to do with regulation of arousal, or what we call affect regulation, and the other is more in the interpersonal realm, which is about interpersonal regulation. And both of them are extremely important, and both of them are largely, disrupted by the neglect experience. So I'm going to talk about each one briefly, knowing that there's so much to say about all of this. As with everything, I always say there's so much to say about nothing. There's so much to say about nothing. I just don't have enough time. But that's part of the regulation issue. So, in the attachment world, we've come to understand that regulation is kind of like ground zero. It's one of the most important things that an infant can learn and incorporate into their system, into their brain, into their body, into their behavior, if they get the right tools and the right early experiences. So, what is affect regulation or regulation of arousal? Well, in the brain, we have what's known as the autonomic nervous system, which is this sort of automatically functioning um, sort of adaptation or adjustment between excitement and calm. And it's quite normal, particularly for an infant. An infant, being a bundle of needs, will get upset and they'll be hungry and they'll cry or they'll reach or they'll claw or they'll want comfort or they'll be scared or they'll be cold or they'll be wet. And they get upset. And when they get upset, their nervous system ratchets up and they'll make a sound and they'll make a face and they'll reach and they'll move, and the whole nervous system starts to speed up, and their breath speeds up, and their heart rate speeds up, and their brain waves start firing faster, and everything ratchets up. And that is the activity of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the sparking, the enlivening, the speeding up of the nervous system. And with luck, with a good enough caregiver, the infant will get their need met that they're upset about needing. They'll get the food when they're hungry, they'll get the warmth when they're cold, or they'll get the dry diaper when they're wet, or whatever the problem is that's upsetting them will get addressed, will get attended to with the appropriate supplies in good time so they don't have to wait too long, and then they will calm down. That's if they're lucky. The calming down is the parasympathetic nervous system. That's where everything slows back down again. Everything goes from being, a speeded up heart rate to a more calm, regulated heart rate. There's that word, regulated. And the norm is to have these ups and downs, and ups and downs. And that's life. That is the life of an infant. That's the life of an infant if they're lucky. So, what happens when the caregiver is irregular, doesn't come, takes too long, disappears, is lost is unreliable or simply not there. There never was one. What happens to that infant when they experience their arousal based on some natural need? Well, what it takes to settle back down again doesn't happen for a long time. So they might reach and cry and claw and exhaust themselves. And without this other to take care of them, to satisfy the need, they're kind of stuck in that hyper aroused state, much like a triggered person, much like you or I, when we get triggered, get stuck in that hyper arousal state. We can't calm down. We can't even think when we're in that state. And that is dysregulation. So, what are we saying here? It's natural to have an ebb and flow of regulation, of getting activated, getting upset, getting attended to, calming down, and we come to learn from the experience of being regulated by the other. Ultimately, that lucky child, the child that is not neglected or that is not traumatized in infancy, learns to self-regulate. And Sue Carter has brilliantly named this harmony between the caregiver and the infant learning to self-regulate and reaching that magical ideal state of regulation and that becoming a baseline. Sue calls that sociostasis, which I think is a lovely word. She made it up. And it's kind of like a combination between homeostasis, which is equilibrium, but it's arrived at interpersonally, sociostasis. I hope that word becomes part of the lexicon because I think it's lovely. So that's the first kind of regulation. Certainly, I didn't learn it, which is why I was constantly stuck in the hyper aroused state, and I still must admit I can still get stuck there in different ways. So let's set aside that one for the moment and talk about the other category of regulation, which is interpersonal regulation. And the interpersonal regulation is similar but distinct. And the interpersonal regulation goes like this. It's natural in relationship to not have a perfectly tuned connection all the time. And an infant or a child will upset the parent, whether it be by, wetting the bed in the wrong place or at a rough time, or fussing when trying to get into the car seat or not wanting to go to sleep. I mean, it's natural for an infant to be fussy or to somehow or other upset the other, upset the primary caregiver who's trying to take care of them. And the chances are good that the caregiver has sleep deprivation, has not enough help, or has postpartum depression, or has marital problems, or has too many kids. So their tolerance for, this difficult moment with their baby might be limited, or it's very natural for there to be times where the mother or the parent just loses their cool and they get upset. And then there's a disconnect between the child and the parent. That's normal. That's normal for a child to, have moments where, I'm sorry, I have to turn off this phone so it doesn't disrupt us. Um, that it's normal to be, disconnected, and with luck, with a parent who has humility, who has self-awareness, they will come back to the child and they'll say, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I lost my temper with you. And they'll scoop up that child and they'll comfort the child so the child won't be scared by the disconnect. They won't be hurt or feel rejected or abandoned or alone or just out there by themselves, not knowing how to get the connection back. That is a good reconnection and a regulation of the relationship where I don't have to be afraid of these natural ruptures because the repair is possible. It's not fatal to disconnect. It's not hopeless. It's not irreparable to disconnect from the other. The other will be back. They'll do the repair. And once again, through the other, through the co regulation, through the other, I learn relationship repair and I can relax and feel safe in relationship. And I can remember, I often say this because it's a really profound, poignant moment in my marriage. It was many, many years ago that my husband turned to me, and it was a moving, moving moment. He said to me, I feel safe with you. He said, I know I can screw up. I know we can get disconnected and we can get back together. So there's not so much pressure to be perfect because if we get disconnected, we'll find our way back. What a blessing to be safe in relationship, to be safe to be imperfect, and to be safe to be human and mortal, because it is human and mortal to be, at times, to make a mistake. And we can get back together. It's no big deal. What a concept. And as we always say to each other, what a great arrangement. We can make a mistake, we can repair it, and keep on going and stay and be connected again and be safe together. I can trust this relationship. I know that will be okay. So, dysregulation of the nervous system is when we get upset, and this may include when we get activated, or to use the more common colloquial term, when we get triggered and when we get stuck there and we don't know how to calm down, or we don't have the equipment in our nervous system yet to calm down, that we feel dysregulated. And similarly, we might be really dysregulated in relationship because we lack that repair with the other. So that is, in a nutshell, the two meanings of the word dis or regulation and dysregulation. So bringing it back to present time, one of the things that we all do to try and self-regulate, and this goes back to my childhood missing moderation, is when one has a hyper-aroused nervous system, one looks for all the ways to settle down, whether it be, well, I tried them all. I tried eating disorders. I was anorexic. I tried alcohol. I was alcoholic by the time I was 14. I was overworking. I was over active in athleticism. And so all these efforts to calm down the nervous system until I discovered in psychotherapy not only the interpersonal regulation that comes through a therapy relationship, but also the different kinds of somatic regulation or affect regulation, arousal regulation, which comes from some of the nonverbal therapies like neurofeedback, like somatic um, kinds of therapy, somatic experiencing, or sensory motor psychotherapy. Now, DBR, which I haven't yet learned, but I'm learning about it being another very effective way of training the nervous system to have a calm baseline and learn to regulate these ebbs and flows and self-regulate and co-regulate with others. And so that brings us up to my final point, which is what I'm learning, I'm still trying to learn now, which is how to regulate how much I try and do. Because what I'm learning is I can't possibly do all the things that I want to try and do and take care of my nervous system and my body and my mind and my relationships as well. So I need to learn to regulate how much I take on. And so I find myself overcommitted, which is why I need my team of angels to help me say yes to some things, say no to others, so that I can ultimately find my balance. And my mother, who is long gone, never succeeded in teaching me moderation, and I'm still trying to learn it. So that's one reason why your videos are coming late and my blogs are, sort of disrupted. And I'm trying to catch up with all these deadlines because I'm still trying to learn it. So, long story short, so many of these issues start so early in our nervous system and in our relationship life that it takes years and decades to learn it. So I need to learn the humility to regulate how much I can realistically do without collapsing, falling over, or really screwing up my body by not getting enough sleep, not getting enough rest, not having enough balance in my life. So I want to help you learn those things too. So I leave you with that regulation, self regulation, and hopefully humility too. So thanks for watching, and I hope to be back with a blog for you next week. I guarantee you'll get something. You'll either get another video or you'll get a blog. You will get something. It may not be on the regulated schedule that I like, but I promise you'll get something within each week period, and preferably not like last week where you got two on top of each other and none the week before. So I'm trying to find my moderation and my arousal. It's a lifelong quest. So I wish you a good week and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.